made the first and the second, so Selena could put that into the minutes. And then Mark, you'll call off each person who has jotted down that they are voting today and ask how they vote. I think you're on mute. Mark, you're on mute. Okay.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no.
Yes, that's correct. I'm sorry.
Okay, and then a quick just update for Tremont. You have Jessica Bass, Jessica Stewart, and Heidi Lawson as voters.
Correct.
Jessica Stewart wasn't able to make that note, but I actually did just go in and do it, so it might show it. I think that's it for housekeeping. Am I correct? All right. So do you want to do the confirmation of the board members attending, Mark? Is it matched here?
I can do that, Heather. I just sent Selena a message, so I just want to make sure I have an accurate count. So as soon as I get that through, I'll read it off just to make sure that that is consistent with everyone.
Okay. All right. And then a voucher has gone around by DocuSign. There's actually a number of vouchers that have gone around by DocuSign. So to be perfectly honest, Nancy, I don't remember if we've had one for AOS that's gone around.
Yes, it was approved.
Yes, there was one.
Great.
And it was all approved, so.
That's what I thought. Okay, thank you. An approval of the minutes from the February 10th, 2020 meeting. Do I have a motion? Todd?
I move to approve the minutes.
And
Second.
Dwayne. Oh, wait a couple seconds. I saw Dwayne's hand, so I'm gonna go with that one.
So
I don't know whose voice that was.
I have Heather, I have a motion from Todd and a second from Dwayne. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, are there any questions or comments about the minutes? Seeing no one waving, Mark, do you want to do roll call for approval?
Yes, please be patient with me because I'm still waiting on the list, but I'm just going to go with the people I see. And if I call your name and you're not a voting member, I'll just move on. Charlie Ray,
I approve.
Heidi Lawson,
I approve.
Todd Graham,
I approve.
John Bench,
Approve.
Marie Yarbrough,
Approve.
Heather Jones,
Approved.
Lily Simmons,
Approved.
Tom Reeve,
Approve.
Teresa King Leclerc,
I'm not voting, so
oh, thank you, Teresa. Kate,
Also not voting tonight.
okay, sorry about that. Christy Squadro,
I'm not voting, but I don't see Robin Sue. Is Robin Sue here?
She just messaged me. She couldn't get, she missed the link, so I messaged it to her. She's probably trying just to get in right now.
Well, I'll wait and not vote because she's supposed to be voting.
okay, Dwayne Bolt,
Approve.
Jessica Bass,
Approved.
thank you. John Eisenhower,
Not voting.
thank you. Ingrid Kashmar,
approve.
let's see, Gary Burr. Gary, are you voting?
Approved. Yes.
Thank you. And Aaron, I'm sorry, Aaron,
Yes, approve.
thank you. Did I miss anybody? Okay, thank you for your patience. Madam Chair, that was unanimous.
Okay, thank you. So the next we come to public comment, but I kind of took care of that in the housekeeping steps. Again, if we do receive any public comment, we will read those into the next meeting, the May meeting. All right, reports and updates. Mark. You're muted.
Sorry. I'll try to be succinct because I know folks may have a number of questions and you've been receiving the updates. So let me try to give you an overview of where we're at. Thank you, first of all, for being flexible and being patient with the technology. to allow us to move forward with this meeting. I would like to give a shout out, first of all, to staff, in particular, our teachers, our support staff, our nurses, social workers, guidance, custodial, transportation, food service. Certainly those folks have all stepped up and done an extraordinary job in the last several weeks in meeting the needs of our students. Everybody's trying to do the very, very best they can. And I am just so proud of everybody that has stepped up during this very critical time. I certainly be remiss too if I didn't point out the support of our boards. We've had several board members volunteer to support us in all areas, from food service to the logistics, and the support has been invaluable in helping us maintain safety and security for our staff and our students. And I'd also like to acknowledge parents and families, the incredible flexibility that they've exhibited during this very, very difficult time. And finally, and certainly not at all to leave them out, but our students. This is what our schools are all about. And this has to be an amazingly difficult time for kids to not be with their teachers, to not be in school, to think of the activities and the events. And we are very mindful of that. So where are we? The 13th of March, Friday, the 13th of March, had a meeting with the administrative team and a number of key individuals. And following that meeting, we made the recommendation to close schools. Folks are aware of that. And we've been out physically of our schools since then. On April the 8th, Governor Mills and Commissioner Macon recommended remote learning continue for the remainder of the year. I won't go into the specifics of the rationale, but if anybody's curious as to why the governor made it a recommendation, first of all, the commissioner by statute cannot close schools. Only the governor can do that. And there is information, there are news articles and several stories as to what the governor's rationale has been to make this a recommendation. But in short, our governor has much expertise in law, and as a constitutional scholar, she basically has vetted that the most important thing that she wants to protect. There are a number of things that happen if she decrees school closures or other pieces in that realm. And local control is very important to her, and also to many of our legislators. And there are a number of significant things that may cascade into a school closure decree by the governor. So that is why we've been given a recommendation, a very strong recommendation from both the governor and the commissioner. The term that we've heard about flattening the curve, I like this term better. What are we trying to do? We're trying to bend the slope of that curve. In short, everybody may have a different theory or opinion on this. We have been from day one listening to the scientists, and agree or disagree, I believe that the virus will determine the timeline. Our first and foremost priority for our kids and for our staff has been safety, number one. In any decision we've made, whether that's food distribution, remote learning, access to our buildings, safety has been our paramount focus. Number two, food insecurity and distribution of food. I have to commend and give a shout out to Barb Neely, who's really taken the bull by the horns and really worked with our incredible food service staff to network. Those good people have worked very, very hard to deliver food to our families and have adapted and amended as conditions warrant. I'm very proud of the fact that these folks got together and they developed a menu across the entire AOS that was consistent. They've also coalesced on distribution. And I will be forwarding a document on food service options that Barb has updated weekly. And there'll also be information about the April break coming out. But I can't give enough kudos and compliments to our food service staff and to Barb. And I will tell you that these good folks have been knocking it out of the park, but they're at a point where they're very tired. They're going to need supports, and we're working on bringing additional supports into those people to make sure that we can continue those resources. From the onset of this situation, we established two teams very quickly, a logistical support team, and that had a number of folks that were engaged in that, but I do want to commend Ian Braun and Bunky Dow. They were really instrumental in vetting cleaning protocols, and also have to thank Dwayne Bolt from the hospital and one of our board members who was also very, very helpful in helping us establish. I will tell you, it was very difficult from day one. There wasn't a whole lot of guidance. We had to work with a number of entities, the CDC, public health, and really build it as we went. But we didn't go into this blindly, and we didn't rush into it. And so we may have been a little slow getting started, but the reality is we wanted to make sure we were doing it right. And so I want to give a thanks to both Ian and Bunky and others that were involved in this. The second team that was established very quickly was the remote learning team, headed up by Julie and the administrators. And Julie will give you an overview of remote learning shortly. In the words of our commissioner, this is not a marathon. This is not a sprint. We're in a marathon. I don't see us coming out of this quickly. And I'm concerned about folks who may let their guard down. The very things that we seek to protect through social distancing, school closures, if we let our guard down too soon, we'll pay the consequences down the road. So I think it's important, if we are bending that slope, flattening that curve, that's good. That means we're doing our job and we're having an impact, a positive impact. And I hope we can continue to be conscious of that. This will not be a short-term path. We should plan thoughtfully for pacing, for flexibility, and adjusting to our new reality. That includes our students, our families, and certainly our staff. Schools are not closed. We are in a transitional phase and adjusting, but clearly we're not replicating traditional classroom instruction. It looks different. And I know that's difficult for students, for families, and for staff. And I appreciate folks being flexible and considering the pacing and the fact that we are all adjusting and we're working through this. That's not just within our communities or in our district. That's across the state and across the nation, and certainly across the world. Schools are providing meals. We're reaching out to students and families to ensure support's in place, making phone calls, we're doing emails, we're doing remote meetings. And if we are not reaching a student or a family, please reach out to us so we can fill that gap and make sure that we're bringing the resources that our students and families need. Schools have become the conduit to hold our communities together. And let's be honest, it's hard work, it's not easy work, and there are new challenges each day. With regard to storm and contingency days, that's pretty much a level playing field now. Any of our schools that may have had a differential in their snow or storm days is a wash now, because the commissioner has issued a blanket waiver for those days. So in short, we're no longer counting those days per se. However, continuity of teaching and learning is important, and we need to document it. And later on, we'll talk about our remote learning plan, and I'll be able to walk through that piece. We are attempting to approach this from a regional perspective. We do understand and respect community identity and the fact that the AOS may be in a different place than other Hancock County public schools, but there are a number of factors that give us the capacity to be able to work together, one being HCTC, and the fact that we have continuity and a really good network of regional superintendents and principals is, I think, a positive. So that brings us to some themes that emerge around this. Essential employees, we've been asked about essential employees. all of us in some way, shape, or form probably know doctors or nurses or police or firefighter who are on the front lines every day risking their lives. Not far behind, educators are deemed essential employees. That has been certified by federal and state government officials. So teachers, support staff, administrators, and all of the folks that are within that realm also are deemed essential employees, and we can't thank them enough. I talked a little bit about pacing, and we'll get into that a little bit more later here this evening and in subsequent meetings. But I will say that this work is exhausting. It's overwhelming. And as we reflect, we're very conscious of the fact that we're trying to do this the very best we can. And if there are questions, please reach out to us, because we're doing our very best to get this right, and we're making adjustments along the way. With regard to finance, I do think we do need to cast a long-range view of this. And for that reason, Nancy and I recommend the following, and we've had conversations with our administrators. And by the way, we've had regular contact with board chairs through this. And these are recommendations, but in the short term, we recognize that we haven't passed a number of our budgets. I believe we've only passed 3 budgets, but even though we've passed 3 budgets, one being the AOS, that's not finite. Certainly the AOS budget is contingent upon all budgets being passed. For that reason, as superintendent, I have to recommend at this time, with the uncertainty of revenues in the near future and the near term, that the boards consider holding any new positions and programs at this time. I don't think it would be prudent to advance that. I think it would send the wrong message to our communities. And certainly, I don't think, given the uncertainty of revenues, we can take anything for granted. So as we wade through and we talk about new positions and programs, it will certainly be within the purview of each individual board. But again, at this time, we'd recommend a hold on that. That would include pre-K programming. And that would certainly include operational positions and any other positions that we've put forward in our budget, with the exception of any special education supports, which are mandated by federal law or needs that our students would have for mandated services. There may be some others, case-by-case basis, that we'll get into, but Nancy and I can speak to that later. For that reason as well, and I've had this conversation with board chairs, appreciate the support of the boards, but I can't with good conscience accept a salary increase for this coming year, and I will not accept a salary increase for this coming year. That is specific to the superintendent only. Revenues are uncertain. We don't know where budgets will go or not go. We don't even know if we'll be able to hold town meetings in many of our communities on time or what they'll look like. So what does that mean? If we don't pass a successor budget by law, the last budget that was passed will be in effect until a successor budget is passed. So if you think about that for a second, turning the page, we need to be very, very careful if that's the case that we're in and the fiscal year passes come 1 July, of how we manage our resources to ensure supports for our students. And I said, we're all in this together. We're going to have to roll up our sleeves and all work together to figure this out. My goal as superintendent is to ensure continuity of programs and services and staffing, #1 priority, to make sure that the resources that we have in place for our students and the outstanding schools that we have continue to the best of our abilities, while easing the impact to our communities, taxpayers, and that we become, and that we remain team players with our cities, with our communities and town managers and select boards. We're going to have to work very, very carefully in the next few weeks and months to ensure that that happens. With that, I will tell you that if you did not get the information, our health insurance premiums, we did receive our percent. We budgeted 10%, as you well know. It came in at just under 5.83%. We were hoping for a smaller percent, still less than 10. So I think if you look at it in the context of the last 3 years, we haven't had a insurance increase in 3 years. So if you want to average it out over 3, any way you want to slice it, it's 2%, but it is 5.83% for next year. And coincidentally, that's the same rate that Ellsworth was awarded. I don't have the rest of the numbers for the state, but that's the information I have at this time. I'll stop, Heather, if there are any questions before we go to Julie. Thank you.
So I'll take questions, but I have 2 screens of people. So if you're interested, keep your hand up. Ingrid, you go, and I'm just going to toggle back and forth.
So Mark, the behavioral specialist position was in the AOS budget, right? And
Correct.
so how are we navigating that?
My recommendation is to hold on that position at this time. I'm
Meaning not fill it. So
not advertising it, not filling
Okay.
it at this time. I don't believe, Ingrid, it would be prudent to do
Yes.
so with so many budgets not passed at this time.
so that just means that dollar amount goes to carry forward in the following year.
Correct. If
Okay.
nothing changes, that
Yeah.
is correct.
Are there any other questions? Nancy?
Under the AOS, that's just a pass through, really. So even though we aren't going to get the money from the towns if they don't have the positions, so it's a wash through, so it won't make any difference, basically. It would be under the regular, the school budgets, I'm sorry, that it would show up or not.
Right. Okay. John?
Sorry. So if we are, say the next school year starts without budgets in place, but we are paying a higher insurance premium, and whether there are other raises that are contractually obligated, presumably other parts of that money has to come out of other parts of the budget from last year.
That is correct, John. We have collective bargaining agreements in place with our teachers and with the Bar Harbor support staff and our working agreements. And again, at this point, we certainly have to and will honor our collective bargaining agreements.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? All right, seeing no hands waving at me, I will move on to Director of Curriculum Assessment and Instruction, Julie.
Thank you, Heather. It's
Yep.
nice to see everyone. This is really weird times, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I hope everyone's doing well. I wanted to just share quickly 3 pieces. The first piece is something that we need a board vote on. Across the state, we've been asked to send in the date that the board approved your remote learning plan. And since we had not had a AOS board meeting since before this started, we haven't had that opportunity. So I believe that was sent out to you in your board packet. I think Josh can put it up on the screen for everyone to see. I'm hoping.
Julie, that's also an action item later on in the agenda too.
Right. I just wanted to go through it so that the vote will take place later, is my understanding. I just wanted to show you what you're looking at. Like many of the districts that I think we compare well to, we've approached this with a 3-phase process. The first phase was the first 2 weeks, during which everything from securing of buildings, trying to figure out devices, trying to figure out what kind of professional development teachers needed to change to this way of teaching and learning overnight, figuring out what kinds of materials needed to be sent out, making sure that all of our students and families were okay. Phase 2, we are now in the 3rd week of phase 2, and that is when we said, okay, we are now doing remote learning. I want to say very clearly, remote learning is not the same as online learning. So if kids were going to an online university or an online school, it would be a different situation than what we have here. What we're trying to do is translate teaching and learning in a way that supports 3 goals. One is connection, because we know that kids need that connection with their teachers, their peers, their school community. The second is engagement and engagement in learning. And the third is trying by whatever means possible to prevent slide. And so that's really what we're focused on at the moment. And then now that we know that this is going to be much more long-term, after the April break, we will be in phase 3. Phase 3 will be something like 6 or 7 weeks. And what we're going to be focusing on there is to maintain continuity of learning and clarify how we're doing just about everything that we would typically do at the end of a school year in this situation. So how do we know what kids know? How do we support and transitions to the next grade? How do we come up with alternate ways to celebrate the end of the year, and particularly for 8th graders and seniors? How do we create a schedule which can be dealt with in a consistent manner? So we have not tried to replicate the school day. Those schools that tried to do that, many of them are stepping away from that. They're not able to maintain it. We wanted to do something that could be sustained and maintained by families in many, many different situations, and to keep trying to balance, you know, the need for flexibility in some families because parents are still working, and the need for structure in other families where that was really necessary in order to support learning. So we have a lot of decisions to be made this week. When we come back after the vacation, we will be putting into place some additional decisions that we are currently making. And we're trying to figure out what that 5, 6, 7 week period is going to look like. So it will be easier, obviously, once we know what that exact end date is. But right now, we're just trying to really figure out, okay, how do we provide professional development for teachers and ed techs? How do we make sure that motivation and engagement continues with students? How do we make sure that we're balancing that flexibility, support, and compassion, as we know that kids are getting more anxious, and in some cases, families in our community have already been adversely hit by the virus with family members in remote places, or, well, other than here, who are either very ill or who have died. So as this gets closer to us, we're going to need to be approaching everything we think about with compassion first. So that's the plan. It's for your consideration, and it just basically, the vote by the board is to say that we understand that the district has moved to full-on remote learning, that this will be the case for the remainder of the year, and that these are the focus areas and priorities of the school administration as we move through this time. Are there questions about that? I can't see anybody because
Yeah. I can only see a handful of people, so I'm not sure if anyone's waving their
Josh,
hand.
can you put that down now so that we can see each other, so that we can figure out if there's anybody who has a hand up? Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. I saw Lily.
So I'm probably I didn't get any like official email. Am I understanding that we are doing the remote learning till the end of the year?
So as Mark pointed out, the recommendation from the commissioner and the governor, now that could change. I suppose we could succeed in bending that curve enough that we would be able to go back to in-person teaching and learning for the last couple of weeks of school, but I think if that opportunity were available to us, then the board would be able to amend this plan and say, we'd like to go back to in-person teaching and learning.
I saw Tammy Tripler.
Yes, I just wanted to say, I just am so amazed by what is being done. And I took some of my college through ITV, and it is totally different from that. But it has some aspects of it. And I just wanted to thank everyone for very quickly figuring out what's working and what's not with students. There's some students that are so overwhelmed by it, not just here in our community, but across the nation. And I just want to let everyone know, and if Julie can do that for the whole team and Mark, that it is appreciated. Families are so overwhelmed and so stressed, even without the virus. And so it's nice to know that it's being taken into consideration, because parents were worried that their students were going to be penalized, or, then we have teachers I was concerned about that they were feeling like they had to meet a certain standard of assignments, feeling pushed by, feeling like they might be judged by the community. I was, worried about our teachers and our staff, because they're feeling that stress too. How do I support my students? But I just want to say I'm really pleased by what I'm seeing so far, and kudos to everyone for what is a truly difficult time.
Thanks, Tammy.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have a question for Julie? No? All right. I'll move on to updates from subcommittees. Do we have anything, Mark?
So Heather, I had two more quick points, but I can list them if you want. I just wanted to say two things very quickly, and I'm happy to share the documentation, but I know that these meetings are hard to continue to focus on. And I believe my newsletter was shared. I've changed the title to the Remote Learning Times, and I'm continuing to try to support us all internally in terms of teaching and learning and trying to remember what our goals are. And we also were contacted by a number of families who were very concerned about the fact that we were going to be having an April vacation, and that the structures that they just had recently begun to put in place that started to work were going to be removed. And so we have worked pretty hard behind the scenes with many of our partners or local arts organizations. So we're working with Beach Cliff, Arts Waves, SFOA, and the Wendell Gilley Museum, plus all of the specials teachers from the K-8 to put together a virtual family arts, nature, and culture camp. And so that will be up as of Wednesday so that people can sign up. And it includes those organizations. In some cases, we're purchasing kits that will be going out to families either through the food, along with the food program, or with remote no-touch pickup from their locations, so that kids can do a lot of these projects at home. And it's a real combination of on and off line, and focuses on walks that can be taken that are not in the park, et cetera, et cetera. So we're hoping that that will provide some structure and some interesting opportunities and experiences. And those were the 2 points I wanted to make. So thank you.
Thanks. Sorry about that, Julie.
That's
Does
all right.
anyone have a question for Julie? All right, seeing none. Now I will move on to updates from subcommittees.
So we obviously haven't had any policy meetings, but I'm hopeful if folks are amenable, that we could do something remotely in May, start up with policy, and allow folks to join in that process. And certainly, I think Nancy and I are going to have to circle back with some boards, do some work, some budget workshops. But I have nothing further at this time, Heather, on any subcommittees.
Okay.
Heather, I forgot one thing.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
That's all
I
right.
just wanted to publicly say how hard all of your principals are working. I don't think it's easy to see not only the thousands of hours that they're putting in, but the way that they are really working with all of their people constantly and consistently to make sure that this is working, and with all of their families. And I just wanted to say that because without them, this whole thing would have fallen apart.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you. And thank you to all the principals and administration too. All right, discussion item, Mark?
Yes, so our recommendation to the board is that we continue with our remote learning as recommended by the governor and the commissioner, and consistent with all other Hancock County public schools, we would recommend to continue with remote learning for the remainder of the current school year. And to be clear, that does not preclude the board from revisiting that if the board authorizes us to continue down that path. You know, I want to be clear that if we continue to go down this road, which we do recommend, all of the administrators collectively, we didn't come to that decision lightly. We deliberated over that for the past week and a half. But again, we think, given our priorities of safety first, it is the prudent thing to do. And should circumstances change and warrant us to revisit that, the board certainly has the ability to do so. Additionally, we are not recommending a closure date at this time. We believe we need more time to do research. We're not, I want to be clear, for those folks that are still looking at day-to-day pieces, we're in a different framework here. We're not replicating the teaching and learning experience, as you know, day-to-day, classroom to classroom. So we need some time to consider what that looks like. We'd also like to do that in concert with our Hancock County colleagues, but certainly that will be within the board's purview. And we would like to come back within the next 2 weeks with a recommendation to the board at that time. This is a recommendation. I'm not asking for a vote. I'm hopeful the board will support us in this recommendation and allow us for the remainder of the year to continue with our remote learning framework. Happy to take any questions you might have.
Ingrid?
So on the recommended date, are you thinking that it might go longer than what the current calendar's last day of school is? Or are you thinking that it might be shorter or some combination? I mean, not a combination, but it could be either.
I certainly don't envision it would go later.
Okay.
I don't. I want to make sure that parents and students and families and the communities know. I also, at this time, and I want to be cautious and very judicious, I'm not recommending this be any time in the month of May. Again, things that we're considering are in a June timeframe, in somewhere in the first couple weeks of June. We're talking students, of course. Staff will be a different consideration, but we need some time to work with our colleagues, to work with all the administrators to make sure that our staff has input. And certainly we do this thoughtfully. And by that time, I will also have recommendations from other superintendents for you to consider as well. I am hopeful we could do this regionally, but it doesn't mean we have to. But in short, Ingrid, I don't envision it will be later than what we had projected with our storm or contingency dates.
Anyone else have questions? Rob and Sue.
Mark, can you just give reasoning to, and I understand it's coming from all directions and recommendations, why do we feel like we need to make this decision right, well, now or within the next 2 weeks?
Thank you, Robin Sue. The question was, if you didn't hear it, why make this decision now? I want to go back to the caveat that should the situation change, the board, we could certainly revisit this, but I think it's important right now, given what the scientists are telling us, the medical professionals, we don't see this window opening anytime soon. Certainly, I think it's really important to know the metrics for safety have to come from the scientists and the medical professional. We don't even have adequate testing across our nation. We don't even know where these hotspots are. And if we are not very careful and sensitive to the fact that we need to do this with safety and health as our foremost priority, I can't with good conscience make a recommendation that we even begin to consider coming back to school until those assets are in place. That is testing, and that is making sure that we can ensure that when our students and staff come back, they're not vulnerable to the virus and certainly putting anybody at risk. So in short, it basically is coming for a combination of things, Robin Sue. It's coming from recommendations from medical professionals and then certainly government officials. I'm not aware of any school, and I could be wrong, but I'm not aware of any school in the state of Maine, New England, or nationally that is considering returning public school, returning back to the current school year.
Are there any other questions?
I also think, Heather, it's important that students, we don't make this recommendation lightly. We understand the implications of what this means for our kids and for our staff. We take that very, very seriously. But I want people to hold safety in the forefront of their minds. And as hard as this is for our kids and our staff and our parents and our families, those of us that have maintained social distancing and staying at home, it's been a real difficult time for all of us. And we don't take that lightly. But if we don't do this the correct way and the safe way, everything we've done in the last 4 to 5 weeks pretty much goes out the window. And I think we want to really be careful about that and making sure that we don't let our guard down. At the end of the day, people wonder, when will we return back to schools? We will return back to schools. That's inevitable. But we need to make sure that we do that the right way so we don't put anybody in harm's way. And we're not going back in, coming back out. We want to make sure that when we return thoughtfully.
Other questions? All right. Thank you, Mark. So then the next discussion item is the middle level question.
Yes. So we had Cranberry Isles. They voted on the question, the middle level question. And the question, just to remind everybody, it's a question about, do you want the AOS and do you want communities to continue to explore the concept of an island-wide middle school? It is not, do you want to build an island-wide middle school, what it will look like, where it's located, the cost. This is a question as to whether or not communities want us to continue to discuss, develop, plan for this, and then bring a proposal back. And we think the prudent thing to do is to make sure that we clarify that question. So folks, that when they do go to town meetings, when the question does come forward, they're very clear on what they're voting on. So we would recommend doing a qualifying statement that could be released, whether that's through an op-ed, whether that's through a combination of things, but we want to make sure that people are really clear about what the recommendation is and what they're being asked to consider. And I don't know if Gary or Marie have anything they'd like to add, or Julie or anybody else. But that was, we just received information that people were wanting a little bit of clarification. So that is our recommendation. And we can do that administratively if the board authorizes us to do so.
Gary or Marie, do you have anything that you want to add?
Yeah, so yeah, this darn pandemic just got in the way of all these informational sessions and things like that that we had, as everyone knows, scheduled to kind of go over just exactly what Mark is talking about. So you may have seen there was an op-ed that did finally get published as well. So there's definitely some pieces out there that are clarifying that you may be able, sorry, to attach to whatever language, Mark, that you're recommending. I don't know. I mean, it's pretty much, I think everywhere we've put the question into every town every town that has been able to have a meeting with their town councilors, that's been out there. The clarification, like we clarified with that really quickly and easily when we met with our town council. I think that when Todd met with Montezur, that clarification was made. I don't know about the other towns if they got that far enough. So, I mean, it's definitely out there that you already have some things that you can connect to, sort of the same message to amplify that. But I mean, yeah, I think it would be a really good idea to continue to amplify that, especially since there's been obviously some other really important things that have been going on over the past couple of months that have kind of probably distracted people, rightly so, to other important, issues in their community. So I think it's a great idea. And I think that there's, like I said, lots of things that have already been done and said that you can connect to that same message.
Thank you. Are there questions or other comments about this?
I do have one question.
Sure, Heidi.
So at our board chair meeting, I know that it's hard to get the information out there. There are a lot of people that don't have internet access. There are people that don't have access to even parents in the school community. And I know that the logistics of it would be tough, but having a generalized mailing with what we're asking of the community members, I think would be really important. I know that any additional money right now is tough, but just to get the information out there in a positive light, I think is really important. I mean, the question is still out there, and there are still people that, no matter what's going on right now, there are still people that feel the way they do about it. And, I just want to make sure that we have that information out there. We have the clarification out there as to what we're asking, and people are clear on that.
I have John Eisenhower.
I agree with Heidi. I would just caution that we hold our resources till actual town meetings look like they're really going to happen, and not spend a lot of effort getting stuff out when it may be months away and people will forget it in any case.
Fair enough. Are there other questions or comments? I'm toggling back and forth. I don't see anything. All right. Thank you, everybody. Mark, you want to move on to action items?
Please. So the first item we have for an action item is consideration of the plan for providing remote learning. That is the plan that Julie just did an overview for you. To be clear, this is an action item, and we would need a motion to approve the plan if the board is so inclined, a second, and then a roll call. And the only thing, if it is passed by the board, and we recommend that you do, in fact, affirm this, the only thing we're required to submit to the state are the minutes of this meeting that says that you passed it, and nothing else. But we are required by the state, in order to qualify for the waiver, to submit the plan. And Julie and I could take any questions, certainly, if you have any.
Why don't I take a motion in a second and then we can go into any questions or discussions.
Are there particular dates for this motion?
I believe, Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, but the plan is for the time that we went out, which was the date of after 13 March until the remainder of this present school year. Is that correct?
Actually, the actual plan that gets voted on does not include an end date for the end of the school year. That's a recommendation from the commissioner. That's something that we're considering at this point. It's a verification that the board understands that we have not closed school and that we are continuing school, and we are continuing it in a remote learning situation, and that we have a plan for how we're doing that.
And again, it doesn't lock the board in from revisiting this decision. The board can revisit this decision if the situation reverses itself.
Okay.
I move to approve remote learning as of March 13th, 2020.
Second.
Second.
So I have a motion from Heidi Lawson, and I have a second from Todd Graham. Madam Chair, may I call the roll?
Are there any questions or any discussion? Seeing none.
No, Kate Chapman has a question.
Oh, sorry, Kate.
Sorry.
I understand that there's the option to undo the remote learning if we get all the go signs from CDC, the state, the governor, and everything like that. In order to undo it, do we have to have an AOS vote to approve that? Is that something we can kind of, because if, let's say, we have our next meeting in May, and come May 30th, there are indications that it's safe to lift this, how do we logistically, go back to school? Is there any provision for that decision to be made by the superintendent alone without the vote, the board's vote?
Well, certainly, similar to other like snow days and contingency days, the superintendent can make those decisions. I would say that if we were in that situation, I would work through the board chair and we would hold a meeting. We're required to, we could hold an emergency meeting, but if we gave the public at least 48 hours, I think it's 48 hours notice, we can hold a board meeting. So we could quickly reverse this if necessary.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none and hearing none. Mark, you want to go ahead and do the roll call?
Yes, Selena has sent me the list. So Heather Jones.
I approve. Todd
Graham.
I approve.
Charlie Ray. I think I'll come back to Charlie. I don't see Charlie. Dwayne Bolt.
I approve.
Robin Sue Tapley.
I approve.
Thank you. Marie Yarborough. Marie, can you give me a thumbs up?
Sorry, it wasn't unmuting, but I approve.
Thank you.
I swear I was pressing unmute.
That's okay. Thank you very much. Yep. Lily Simas.
I approve.
Thank you. John Bench.
Approve.
Thank you. Ingrid Kashmar.
Approve.
Jim Sawyer.
I'm voting for Jim. I approve.
Oh, Susan Allen. Okay, Susan, we'll record you as a voter. Thank you, Susan, and welcome back.
Thank you.
Heidi Lawson.
Approve.
Thank you. Jessica Stewart.
Approve.
Thank you. Jessica Bass.
Approve.
Thank you. Gary Burr.
Approve.
Tom Reeve.
Approve.
And Aaron Brown. Aaron? I don't know if Aaron's still with us. Did I lose Aaron? Okay. Just want to check. I believe, do I have to come back and get a vote from Charlie?
I just texted him. I haven't heard back yet. But yeah.
Yeah, just let me check with Selena to make sure we're okay. Sorry.
Yeah, we've lost Aaron.
Yeah, and Charlie. I think we're okay. I just sent Selena a text. And so with that, with the members that did vote, that was unanimous, but I'll double check to make sure that we don't require either Aaron or Charlie.
Okay.
Sorry, I do.
Oh, Aaron? Did you approve, Aaron?
I do approve.
Thank you
I
very
do,
much,
but
Aaron.
the video skipped. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we're okay, and I'll check in with Charlie here in a second.
Okay. All right, thank you, everybody. And then our next action item is vote to authorize superintendent to accept bid for fuel price for the 2020-2021 year.
So I guess I want to try to give you some good news in this situation. Other than it's great to see all you and that you're healthy. I hope everybody's healthy. The good news is that we're currently paying $2.22.9 per gallon for heating oil. A few weeks ago, I checked with Heather and she allowed me to go out to bid through Nancy. And I'm pleased to report the bids came in. And so our heating oil price for next year would be $1.25 per gallon. And so if the board is so inclined, I would need a motion to authorize the superintendent to accept the bid for a fuel oil price of $1.25 per gallon for the fiscal year 2020-2021, please.
I move
Is that
to
correct,
approve.
Nancy?
Oh.
Is that
Yeah.
correct? Thank you.
Go ahead, Heidi.
All right, I move to authorize the superintendent to accept the bid for fuel oil prices for 2020-21 at $1.25 per gallon.
Thank you, Heidi.
Second.
Who's the second?
Oh, it's Susan Allen is.
Oh, thank you, Susan. Okay.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, back to you for discussion.
Yep. Are there any questions? Anyone have any concerns about the rate? All right. Seeing nothing.
Madam Chair?
Yep.
Mr. Ray just returned. Charlie, may I ask him on the last?
Why don't we take this vote, Mark, since we've got a motion and a second on the table, and then we'll pop back to the remote learning one.
Thank you.
Charlie, we are voting on the authorized superintendent to accept bid for oil price for it's $1.25. All right. So you can do.
I thought it was $2.29.
It is for the current year, Charlie. Next year it'll be $1.25.
Yeah.
May I call the roll?
Please.
Thank you. Heather Jones.
I accept or approve.
Todd Graham.
I approve.
Charlie Ray.
I approve.
Wayne Bolt.
I approve.
Robin Sue Tapley.
I approve.
Marie Yarborough.
I approve.
Lily Simmons.
I approve.
John Bench.
Thumbs up.
Susan Allen.
Approve.
Ingrid Kashmar.
Approve.
Heidi Lawson.
Approved.
Jessica Stewart.
Approve.
Jessica Bass.
Approve.
Gary Burr.
Approve.
Tom Reeve.
Approve.
And Aaron Brown. Aaron?
He looks frozen. Aaron, if you can give a thumbs up or something.
Yeah, they're having some internet challenges out.
Are they?
Aaron, you with us? Oh, I think we lost Aaron.
I think we lost Aaron. Okay.
So outside of Aaron, we have a unanimous vote. And Selena, on the last vote, I just heard from her, we're okay with or without Mr. Ray.
Okay.
So I believe that would be the case too with Aaron.
Yep. I would agree. All right. So moving on to other business. Mark, do you have anything?
I have nothing further, Madam Chair. And at this time, I don't know if Nancy or Julie have any other items. I don't see
Melissa?
you. No. Or Melissa, yeah. Nancy, anything else?
Basically, you said it pretty much with the financial part. We're trying to hold the line, and so that because of the revenues being so uncertain, that we want to make sure we're in a good place for next year. So that's basically what we're doing, and trying to figure out what's going to happen with town meetings and budgets. So thanks.
Okay. Melissa or Julie, any other business? Okay. All right, public comment. Again, if there's anything that comes in, that will be read into the minutes of the next meeting.
Yes.
And are there any future agenda items?
Can I?
I think those will be determined through the board chairs in the next few weeks, but certainly we'll have updates on this situation and other developments, as well as possibly some other recommendations with regard to finance or budgets.
Okay. Heidi, did you have
I would
something?
like to, Heather, I would like to add one other thing. Want to thank parents and staff and others are reaching out. We are very conscious of a number of activities for students, whether those be celebrations, step-up activities, proms, graduations. There's a whole host of things that are on our radar. And I want families and I want board members and students to know we're working on those things. Principals have rolled up their sleeves. They're soliciting input from students and staff, and we will have information shortly on what our thoughts and plans are in those areas. And I'd also like to add too that if this has gone well for the board, we will be standing up remote meetings for all of our local boards as well using this protocol. I actually want to give a shout out to Cranberry. We held our first remote meeting with them last Friday. It went well, and I want to thank Josh Young and Wendell Opalwall and the technology folks for clearing the hurdles and ensuring that this platform works smoothly. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Heidi, did you have something?
I did. I actually have three things, and they're super quick, and they might be board chair meeting stuff, but I just want to give a shout out really quick to Red Sky in Southwest. I know that we have some amazing people in our district that are working hard to make sure that we have kids and families fed, but Red Sky is really going above and beyond, I believe, as a business to help community members. And they're offering a lunch program every day of the week, 5 days a week, to community members at no cost, donation only. And I think that that's really important that they're stepping up as a restaurant. The other two things are really quick. Storm day waivers. I know that now we're doing remote learning and learning how to do this well. Is there some way, and this is for Julie, is there some way that we can look forward as storm days doing the remote learning? And this is a platform for that. And then also, have we heard yet about executive sessions? If we have to go into those, how we can navigate those?
If I may.
Hang on one second. Let's I'll take so thank you for Red Sky. I think there are a lot of restaurants that are stepping up. So yeah, I think thank you to all of the restaurants that are helping. Let's go to her second point and have Julie, and then Mark will come back to you for her third point.
The only issue is the issue that we had on Friday, which is we can plan to learn remotely, and then if there's no power, then it's hard to do that. So there is some discussion, very preliminary, about using some of the tools that we're using on a more regular basis across more of the AOS. Some of the teachers, for example, had a Google Classroom before this. Many others learned how to do it and turned it around and is working with it for the first time. And however, the students who were working with middle school and high school teachers where there was a Google Classroom, that transition was much easier. And so I think there's a lot to be thinking about. I think the issue of power would be the issue on our island, especially and in this area, that would deter our ability to do that. Yeah.
Thank you, Julie. Mark, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Nope, I'm ready to take on the executive session piece whenever you're ready.
Yep, you can do that. And well, John Eisenhower, do you have something on this topic about remote? Okay, I'll come back to you then. So executive session.
So with regard to executive session, unless there's been something new, and I don't believe there has, executive sessions cannot be conducted remotely. We must maintain that in a public setting. And so that will be a challenge if we have some things to navigate that require an executive session. I will reach out to the attorneys again. I don't know. I'm sure that's been a question across the state. So I don't know how that's being tackled. The emergency legislation that was passed, signed by the governor and passed by the legislature, allowed for meetings to be conducted remotely during this crisis. As soon as the crisis is declared over, we cannot use this vehicle to conduct public meetings, but that does not extend to executive sessions, is my understanding.
So I would hope that we wouldn't have to worry about that at all. I mean, I can't foresee anything, but if the only reason why I ask is if we're in such uncharted territory, you just never know what's going to happen. That's
correct.
Yeah.
So Mark, I want to follow up on that one because one of the workshops that I attended the other week, I think Todd, you listened in on it. They were talking about the remote meetings, but executive session was brought up. And I think how they handled it is you had 2 Zoom calls. So you had your meeting, this one here, and then there was a separate Zoom call that was the executive session. And then you returned back to the public meeting.
Yeah.
So that's
I'll double check with Melissa. I could be wrong, Heather. And if I am, we'll correct the record, but you may very well be correct. My understanding is we can't, I could be wrong.
Well, and maybe they just went about it and they didn't know the rulings on it. Okay.
But either way, we'll follow up for the board and get clarification from legal counsel.
Okay. John.
Just occurred to me to ask, are there any complications with board members' terms expiring at the end of June and then they're still voting on things in July? Or are they just automatically staying until there's an election?
May I, Heather?
Yes, please.
So my understanding is if we have any board members whose terms are expiring and we don't have elections, what would happen is, we certainly would have to go back to town charters and look at those pieces and work with town managers. But I believe unfilled seats can be filled by local boards within a 30-day period. That's my understanding, and we'll research that as well. But no, the term couldn't automatically extend. Somebody would have to be named or slated to be in that position. And if it was not done by the board, I believe that goes to the Board of Selectmen or counselors. We'll research that as well.
Okay.
And it might be slightly different by each town.
Yeah. So my understanding is that it's by the town meeting. And if town meetings get pushed back, wouldn't those board members by default stay on until the town meeting, until they can figure that out? Would that not be how it worked?
Again, I'd want to double check with legal counsel and make sure we vet it against each individual town. So we'll do some research on that to give some guidelines so folks are really clear what the expectation is before we get to those town meeting deadlines.
Yeah, I just wouldn't want us to be voting on things and then find out they're invalid votes for some reason in July.
Yep.
Okay, Tammy.
I just want to say that it has happened, of course, not in these circumstances, but because we have a select board, the selectmen were the ones that filled that position.
Yep. Thank you. Okay. I have next meeting to be determined. Mark, I'm guessing it was a to be determined because if we need something before May 11th.
May I?
Please.
So just wanted to mention we are going to work with board chairs to schedule successor meetings in all of our local boards. But I know that Ingrid and Matt are working to schedule a high school meeting. And I'm not sure when that's going to happen. I know I was talking to Matt today. If it doesn't happen the following week, it may be, 2 weeks from today. If that does happen, I'd like to ask that maybe board members just pencil in the 27th of April for a potential AOS meeting. We might have a recommendation by then. And we could do a meeting that evening if that works for folks, but I'll consult with Heather and Ingrid as well on trying to coordinate our next meeting date.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So next is adjournment. Now, Mark, do we need to do a roll call, or can I take this like Bill Firm does? We can have a motion and a second, and everybody who's in favor, they leave the meeting.
I don't want to mess this up, so if you give me the liberty, I'll just call the roll just to make sure we're official.
Adjourn.
Heidi Lawson, I'm sorry.
Heidi.
Second.
A second from Ingrid Kashmar, okay. Any discussion? Seeing none, the vote is to adjourn the meeting. Heather Jones.
Approve.
Todd Graham.
Approve.
Charlie Ray.
Approve.
Dwayne Bolt.
Approve.
Robin Sue Tapley.
Approve.
Marie Yarborough.
Approve.
Lily Simmons.
Approve.
John Bench.
Approve.
Susan Allen.
Approve.
Ingrid Kashmar.
Approve.
Heidi Lawson.
Approved, and thank you guys.
Thanks, Heidi.
Jessica Stewart.
Approve.
Jessica Bass.
Approve.
Gary Burr.
Approved.
Tom Reeve.
Approve.
Aaron Brown.
Approve.
Thank you, Madam Chair, unanimous.
Thank you. Everybody have a good night. Thanks very much for participating, and we'll see you probably in a few weeks again.
Thank you.
Yep.
Stay
Bye.
safe, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you.